There are many good reasons to dig. We would not dig up 7.4 billion tons of coal every year for no good reason. We mine, we build tunnels, we explore. But I was more interested in the people that dig for no good reason. People that would have a hard time even explaining why they do it. People that dig with joy in their hearts and a little bit of mania in their brains. People afflicted with the hobby of tunneling. In 2005, Jean-Luc Josuat-Verges got lost in the tunnels of an abandoned mushroom farm. He survived 35 days eating clay, rotten wood, and sucking up water off the walls. When his abandoned car was discovered nearby, 20 officers were sent into the caverns to search for him. They found him 200 meters away from the exit. Despite his ordeal, Josuat-Verges declared that after his initial shock and bout of despair, he slowly began embracing his disorientation, and even found a meditative calm in the absolute dark. He would allow his thoughts to soften as he walked the tunnels in peaceful detachment. He embraced the dark and the narrow accidentally, but there are some men that build their own snug little caverns. There are scientists and farmers and everything in between. From Costa Rica to Russia, the world is filled with mole men and women. The only thing these people have in common is that they dig for many years, and they like to use manual tools. Pickaxes, shovels, pulleys, a bucket, a wheelbarrow perhaps, and that's about it. That and a bit of dirt under your feet is all you need to start the leisurely pursuit of tunneling. It is an interesting hobby. It's a hobby where progress is guaranteed with effort, as compared to learning the piano, where you can practice for years and still suck at it. It's also a great physical exercise that clears the mind, or so Seymour Cray, the father of supercomputing, claimed. One of these mole men was William Schmidt, a lone prospector that went looking for gold in the El Paso mountains. He had no easy way to get his ore to a smelter, so he spent 32 years digging a 600-meter shortcut through the heart of a granite mountain. You might think Mr. Schmidt had a good reason to dig, but 20 years into his tunneling, a road was built that rendered his tunnel useless. Even so, he continued digging for another 12 years and finished the tunnel. That is commitment to finishing what you've started. There is no evidence that Mr. Schmidt ever found gold on his land, but maybe his tunnel was just his way of looking for it. He did most of the work with a pickaxe, a hand drill, and a wheelbarrow. Later on, he got a mining cart and occasionally got to use dynamite. He lived an extremely frugal life, patching his clothes with flour sacks, mending his shoes with tin cans, and cutting short the fuse of his dynamite. That almost cost him his life. Mr. Schmidt dug his tunnel in the middle of nowhere, and when it was done, he sold it and moved on. He did not bother anyone with his tunneling. On the opposite side, John Bentinck, the 5th Duke of Portland, was an upscale digger. The Duke had himself a billiard room, a library, a ballroom, and 24 kilometers of tunnels dug under his property. He didn't do it by himself, though. The Duke had money to spend, so he hired hundreds of workers to make his underworld dreams a reality. He never held a ball in that ballroom, but he did skate in there, so it wasn't a total waste. The Duke was a big fan of skating and tunnels. He also liked his privacy. He liked it so much that he would often hide from the hired help who were going into the maze of tunnels trying to convince him to eat something. The Duke was a bit of an eccentric, but he didn't bother anyone with his tunnels. That brings us to William Lyttle, a civil engineer who started digging for a wine cellar and couldn't stop digging. He dug for 40 years in the Hackney district of East London and became an urban legend while he was still alive, shoveling away under people's feet. No one cared at first, but when the power started cutting off and cracks began to appear in the pavement, people started to suspect Mr. Lyttle had something to do with it. A bar complained in fear of their cellar collapsing, and there was also the problem of a nearby bank. And then it happened. Part of a public road collapsed and people got a glance inside the subterranean world that Mr. Lyttle was digging, and they didn't like it. There was panic on the streets. Buses were diverted, and William Lyttle was forcibly removed from his home. The city council reallocated Mr. Lyttle to the top floor of an apartment building to stop his behavior. In 2010, at the age of 79, William Lyttle died, and the authorities discovered that he had continued his hobby by making holes in the walls of his apartment. Not only the interior walls, but also the exterior walls. It cost the City of London £300,000 to secure the area around his house by cementing the tunnels. The dilapidated house was sold for £1.12 million to artist Sue Webster, who hired famed architect David Adjaye to rebuild and preserve as much of the old building as possible. There is an interesting parallel here. Biologists pour molten zinc into ants' nests to make molds out of their tunnels. This kills the nest, of course, but preserves the tunnels for study. The city officials of London made sure no one will ever walk William Lyttle's tunnels, but in doing so, they preserved them for the future. I think it's fair to say William Lyttle bothered a lot of people with his tunnels, but someday we'll get to see them in a different light.